All right, guys, welcome back. We are at it again today. Uh, Again, I'm going to be setting the standards way too high that I can't keep them. We have Keith Thompson joining us today. But first, real quick, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started with him. I'm going to try and do a better job than I done with Ben of keeping my mouth shut and letting the guy we're talking to talk. So I apologize for any of you. I always go back and listen to these after I get them uploaded, and I don't always do the best job, but I'll try to do my best today. Um, we will probably eventually be uploading these onto a podcast platform. It probably will be Spotify at some point, but I will be sure to share that. And we will probably be having some rebranding going on here if I can kind of settle on a name and stuff. But like I said, that's really not what this is about. It's not about me, it's about the guests. And so I'll let Keith Thompson introduce himself. I've known of Keith for probably, I don't know, let's say 5 years. I've known him for probably three years. Been able to kind of talk to him and get to know him a little bit. So he's a wealth of knowledge. He's got a lot of experience. So a lot of wisdom. But yeah, I'll let him introduce himself and we'll kind of share his story. So, Keith, take it away.
Yeah, yeah. I farm kid, don't been farming my whole life. That's just what you do when you're on a farm. You're always with your dad. Um, my first introduction, I'm just going to go kind of way back. I was in college, K-State, soils class, introduction. They talk about no-till. I think it was 72, 73, somewhere in that range. And I don't remember a whole lot about it except thinking that would be the way I'd want to farm because never was a lover of tillage. And it's not that I didn't enjoy, and yet you have to admit it, when you get done today, you can see what you've done. You just have to, everything was whatever color it was, now it's all black. But after that ended it instantly, from there on, it was nothing. I hated it. And then because of the hate of having to go out and stop blowing soil, riding rough ground when you're trying to get ready to plant, um, the erosion deal. Then I even got to where I disliked tillage. And so in 73, or whatever year that was, I decided I was going to no-till, and I came back and I was telling my dad about this. We took an old 496 planter, had an Oliver 77, I pulled it. I planted 30 acres, no-till. And I can't say it was a success, and I can't say it was a failure. If there was any failure, it was me not looking at the system and deciding what I'd done wrong. And later, looking back, well, it was a runner type planter. So I wasn't getting good seed soil contact was
Yeah.
my biggest deal. Weed control was good. I mean, that part worked great. And then uh,
What were you guys using for weed control at that point? Like what was even available?
yeah, 2,4-D and atrazine would have been the two big ones. And I do remember using paraquat to burn the weeds down. That was one of the things that I remember learning that we used paraquat. And I didn't like that because it had this symbol on the side of it that pirates use on the
Yeah.
flag, and so which means death. So that kind of slowed me down on wanting to use that system. And basically, I moved into a minimum till where we actually become what they actually had a name for it, skip a till. So you'd plant in the bean ground without working it, and then you'd chisel milo or corn ground. Did that. And I kept practicing, trying to figure out why I couldn't get good stands. Went to a double disc opener planters. There were some other things. I remember going to some meetings. I remember going to a meeting in St. Louis, and I remember walking out of this meeting and listening. I wish I had better notes, kept track, don't remember who it was. And I remember walking out of that meeting like, is that all I've been doing wrong all these years? It seemed like one simple step that had never crossed my mind. And I went home and I was about 90, I think it was. And in 91, we'd been doing the skip a till and no till. I had a combination of three things going on at once. for about 5 years. And finally, I just told my dad and my brother, I said, this is silly. We're trying to, too many systems going on here. We're just going to no-till. In 91, quit doing any kind of tillage. I've never done any type of tillage since 91. I mean, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The only time, honestly, the only time I've used the plow was rebuilding some terraces one year, and I got the plow out and used the plow to loosen the soil up so I could reform them. And that was one of the things that I would take as if somebody's getting into it. I wish, because you're already goofed up, in my way of thinking with tillage, that when you start, you should redo your terraces and waterways and level your ground and do those things and then get started. If I made any mistake, that was my biggest mistake. Over the years, I look back, because what I just told you, I had to rebuild the terraces. We've done that a couple of times. And if I'd done this, the terraces I had just built, like preceding year or two before that, they looked just like they did then. We're talking, what, 35 years?
Yep. Yeah.
That was one learning thing that I wish I would have, nobody told you. And just no-tilled in 1990. Yeah, I went on the first no-till on the Plains bus trip to Dwayne Beck. They had a bus trip up there, and a bunch of people on that bus trip, still friends with them today. And up there listening to Beck talk, and he was. Anybody heard Beck talk, what that's like. Seems crazy, You think it really has a way of telling you what you're doing wrong, but being nice about it. And we were up they don't farm this anymore, but it was south of the river. I forget what he called that. And I remember he turned to me and he said, and how he knew me this well and knew anything about where I'm from. I remember him saying, this soil here, Keith, is exactly the same soil you're farming in Kansas. It's the same, came from the same deal. It's got the same clay problems and all things. And he goes about, then he starts talking to everybody and tells what he's doing. I remember turning to my son, and I know it sounds terrible, but I said, I turned to Ben and I whispered to him, I said, if this crazy SOB is half right, we're going to start making money.
I'm sure you're not the first one to call him a crazy SOB.
And got a good friendship with Dwayne, and I met Matt Hagney on that trip and become good friends with Matt. And in 99, Dwayne said, we need to go to South America and study long-term breaks and no-till. They said, those guys are 15 years ahead of where you're at. Go down and learn from them. So my son and I and Matt Hagney and Doug Paul, we spent 3 weeks down there goofing around. These guys were like intense on rotation. And that's where my son got to see what they were doing with cattle, and that's the reason we ended up getting cattle into our operations, how they work cattle into the no-till. And one of the odd things that we would see, to ask them questions, how much fertilizer are you putting on? Oh, we're putting on 40 units. And how many bushels? And it worked out to like 130 or 40 bushel corn. Like, wait a minute. How do you get many bushels from this little fertilizer? This does not make sense. We even went to University of Buenos Aires, talked to the agronomist there. Their deal was what they said. They thought that they were pulling long-term carbon deep from the soil, and when that was all, because they were no-tilling, and when that was gone, then they'd have to start putting fertilizer on like we are here. That was their deal. But as I look back later, and when Dwayne was talking about long-term break, they had this rotation. They'd have 4 to 5 years of a pasture, and then that pasture then became farmland, and the farmland became pasture. And it was this rotation with cattle and this 5-year break. I was like, knowing what I know today, or have learned, or what I think I know would be a better way. They were rebuilding the soil carbon in that 5-year period. and they were also using it for weed control. Their system was in the pasture when they got where they couldn't, where the weeds in the pasture were not providing any nutrition for the cattle. That was their clue that it's time to go back to crop ground. And
Hmm.
same thing with crop ground. It might be 4, 5, 6 years. There was no set. It was just they
Uh,
went by weeds.
were they, I'm assuming there was no tillage involved in going to pasture to farm ground to
Yep,
pasture.
that's the
No
way.
tillage.
Now they just
So,
yeah.
so it would make me wonder what and again, you said that was in the 90s, and essentially looking back, they didn't exactly know what all the reasons for the responses were, but it'd be interesting to know what their soil biology community was like, because I bet they had a really good balance of soil biology, um, and that would be another reason again. But with the carbon, they were constantly getting basically carbon rebuilt into the system to feed the soil biology that it made their nitrogen so efficient that way that they were applying
Right.
out there with the corn.
And it wasn't they weren't using no fertilizer, but
Hmm.
they figured out a way to do it. And they honestly, soil health was never mentioned.
Right.
That soil tilt was, that was kind of a big thing. They kind of had time after 5 years, you'll see this change, 10 years, you'll see this change, 15 years, you see this change. And what's interesting to me, that was also about the first time we started seeing cover crop, is and we started growing covers in 2001 or two. When we, after more trips down there, um, that was also part of their system that they didn't take into consideration what was being added. But
Hmm.
nobody knew. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying nobody knew, and I'm going to guess somebody knew somewhere. And if somebody's listening to this, they'll say, "Oh, they knew that back in the 1800s, and
Yeah.
they were doing it in the 1800s." I don't think they knew why they do it. They just knew they saw a response, just like
Yeah.
these guys down there were seeing a response from this long-term break. And the explanation they gave us, sure, from what I've learned since, is like that wasn't what was happening.
Yeah. Well, and
I mean, it was
it's just cool that that was just the way they farmed. That was that was just how they did it. They knew that it had positive impacts, but like you said, they weren't doing it because of quote unquote soil health. They were just doing it because that was probably how they made the most money, was farming like that.
exactly, yeah. And we would set meetings, and I'll guarantee you, they would sit around and talk about different rotations, and they had records going back 50 years of all the things, and they was mulling all this around, and their whole scheme was to get the most ROI out of their deal. I mean, that was with the cheapest amount of. It wasn't about yield; it was the
Hmm.
most money per acre. That was their whole deal: was how they could make the most per acre, and how whether it was through cattle or wheat or corn or soybeans, and they what rotation, what followed, this followed that, that made a few more extra bucks. It was a real
When
learning experience.
when was the last time you were down there?
uh Last time I was down there was in 2002. Doug Paul and I went down there. That was my next trip. I went, and we went to Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. We went to our goal was to ride mountain bikes, which we never got done, and go to the Opera Seed Conference, which is like our No Till on the Plains conference. And that's in our way there. We visited, with Rolf Gerbsch, Admir Karagari, and we missed him at his research farm to see all the stuff he was doing with cover crops. But we did meet him at the Opera Seed Conference to listen to him talk. And Doug and I invited him up to come speak at No Till on the Plains. And I think 2006 before he finally got up here. He was a busy man.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of other. There were, I'm trying to me, names escape me right now, but there were all the kind of like famous people that started no-till going down there. Carlos Covetto was one. Um, Name probably come as I said a little bit.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're
They were
good.
just really good guys,
Yeah.
really smart people.
Um, are they, I wonder, because I know because of farm policies, especially in like Argentina, I wonder, I wonder if that's still the driving theme behind their farming practices is ROI. I'm sure it is, but it's just, I wonder how much everything has changed because they can't export beef anymore. Or that I know there for a while. Maybe today they can. I know that was a catalyst for kind of a change in their direction. But it'd be very interesting to know if that culture still exists of getting together and talking about rotations. Uh,
Yeah, I think it's been a big change. I know the year after we were there, or the next year after we were there, a different government came into Argentina, did what you just said. They had this crazy idea that they need to cut cattle exports off to feed the nation, which is stupid. And the farmers like, okay, we'll just grow soybeans and
yeah,
do away with cattle. So all
yeah,
that cool stuff they've been doing for 50 years went away because I'm just going to say idiot leader come up with some dumb idea that didn't work. And well, you see what's going on in Argentina today with
yeah.
Milei, and he's completely turning that place upside down. Uh, but I have talked to some Argentinians, and yeah, you're right. They could this their whole system has gone more like what we're doing here. You know, big farms growing few crops. I don't think they do the cattle thing like they used to. It's a real shame. They really had a really well thought out system that was working, that was blown away by changes.
From and I've heard you talk about it before. I've heard Dwayne Beck talk about it before. It really seems like they probably had a good model for large scale agriculture to quote unquote feed the world, if that's what you want to call it, if that's the term you want to use to feed the world. But it was still, they were still keeping in mind soil function.
Exactly. Yeah, that soul function was definitely a huge thing that they talked about.
Yeah.
Getting as much water in the ground as they could, keeping it covered. That was we hear that all the time today. That was the first time I think I've ever really understood that, what they really meant by that. Because I went and saw uh, part of the story. Carlos Quevedo visited my farm, and I want to say it was '97, and I listened to Carlos speak at the National No-Till Conference, and No-Till on the Plains got him here and he stood around. I remember he came to our farm because I was one of the few that was, kind of like no-tilling, and I was really excited that Carlos Quevedo, one of the five pioneers of no-till in South America, was going to visit my farm, and I was like, when you start out, you think you know everything. I was really feeling it, and remember we stopped at the place and we walked out there and it was clean and da da da. And Carlos stood there, had his hands behind his back and kind of looked around and he didn't say too much. And he kind of bends over and he scratches the ground and stands back up, kind of looks nice, clean. Your soil's sick. That's what he told me. My soil was sick. He says,
And
ours.
you probably felt about this big, huh?
Yeah, well, not even that good. I was like, just like, but I do remember, I didn't that it embarrassed me, but it did make me like the next time Carlos visits my farm, that is not going to be the problem. I'm going to figure out what he's talking about. And he was just talking about keeping stubble on the soil, keeping it covered, because that's what was wrong. And also when you look back, and you've been through it too, Tyrell, when you first start, it's really hard to keep residue on top because your soil life is building up and eating everything you grow. And as time went on and we started growing cover crops and livestock on there, I want to say our farms now are more balanced and residue hangs around a lot longer. It doesn't disappear like it used to. So, yeah, and I just didn't understand the system. That was my problem.
No one did.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I mean, not. Uh, it doesn't matter whose story you listen to. Uh, even, I mean, how long? Uh, the late great David Brandt. How long before he added wheat back into his rotation? And he was
Yeah, yeah.
one of the earliest pioneers of no-till and super early adopter of cover crops. And uh, he was in the corn and bean cycle. Just for context, what part of Kansas are you located in for folks?
Oh, well, I'm between Topeka and Emporia, Kansas, eastern Kansas, about, I would say 70, 80 miles from the Kansas Missouri line.
What
We're west of that.
right? What's your rainfall?
Oh, they claim 32, 34. That shallow clay soil,
Yeah,
and they're not very deep. Uh, Matter of fact, that's we, yeah. I get, I gripe about it, but if I wanted to fix it, I just have to move.
yeah.
This is just you learn to deal with it. You don't love it. Yeah.
What what
It's
was what was what was your because you said you grew up on a farm, correct? What crops were you guys growing? What livestock did you guys have when you were coming up?
Well, my grandpa had the livestock. My mom and dad didn't want to have anything to do with it. Couldn't tell you why. But I do have. I can't tell you why. I remember in the high school I wanted to raise cattle, and I remember my mom telling me that she thought that was silly. She says you lose money, you lose money when you buy them, you lose money when you grow them, and you lose money when you sell them. And that was kind of my at 8, what high school that be banged in your head.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
until I was, and also when I watched people around here how they was raising cattle, especially in the winter. I was like, I am not going to do that. That's crazy. I mean,
Hmm.
feedlot, had the cows in a lot. It was terrible. And when we went down, I think that's what changed my mind in my son's mind when we was in Argentina, seeing how they did it out on pastures and they never kept them confined and they made sure that they had something for them to eat. And when my son came back there, I want to start raising cattle. And I was like, oh man, I don't know about that. And he said, well, let's do it like they did down there. We'll use electric fences and do those sort of things. We'll do this where we won't keep them in lots. And matter of fact, it's my son, the way he raised cattle and the way he does it, caused a lot of, the deal where people are like, yeah, he
Snickers,
doesn't know what
dirty
he's
looks.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
dirty looks. Why are you doing that? That's stupid. And it's kind of, I got where I really, I look back like, man, I really like messing with cattle. Ain't that big of a deal. And he does 99% of the work. I'm big on, I help sort and, you know, fix fence and take care of him when he's gone. Real simple things, but he does all the day to day. Our cow herd is he actually started out with goats and used them to clear pastures. I think I'm right. We had like 250 or 300 goats at one time.
Yeah.
And once the good feed for goats goes away and they've ate up what is brush and all that, well, then they want to escape. And so his deal, what he did, he'd catch goats that were escaping, take them to the Yates Center, sell them, then go down to Emporium, buy a cow, and come
There you
back. And
go.
that's how we started. Yeah, just until we don't have goats anymore. I think got one goat he keeps around just for fun. And I don't know how many we got. We got 120, 150 mama cows. That's a pretty good herd.
Hmm.
And just, we run them, like plant cover crops. And well, one of the things that we do is where we're going to plant soybeans, we plant a cover crop and then Ben brings them into those areas and that's where they calve. We keep them there as long as we can, literally to the day we're ready to plant soybeans. And then that buys us about 3 weeks of not putting them out on the pasture. And he has found that by doing that, and we're talking 3 to 4 weeks later than normal, for people taking pasture, that allows that pasture to grow up that we have only once in all the years since we've been messing with cattle has he really got concerned about having enough feed time summer
I'm
increase.
assuming a turnout for you guys in your area is May 1st, just on average is probably May 1st in your area
Yeah,
on
yeah,
pasture.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
you're going
Yeah,
more like into May or
June,
first
mid
of June,
June.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
June,
you're
mid June sometimes.
yeah. So yeah, then your warm seasons are actually I mean, they're probably almost halfway through their life cycle for that summer.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
instead of few inches off the ground. And I don't know why we can't grow any warm season grasses.
Right. And then we reseed things and we just do all types of just things because we don't have a lot. Remember, I told you I didn't grow up, so I never did. My lifetime, I took out fences and did away with ponds, and then since he got into the operation, I've been building fences and building ponds. So
Yeah, yeah. How has the crops changed through the years as far as crops grown in your guys' area and on
uh,
your operation?
we've we've tried all types of things. We're going back to wheat double crop milo again this year. We haven't done that for about 5 years. Uh, no particular reason, just marketing things. I've named something. I've tried, sunflowers. We've grown mung beans, and of course, corn. Last year I had no corn and all grain sorghum, which was a poor choice. Uh,
See, around here, everyone would say they should have had all grain sorghum and no corn around here.
yeah, right,
So,
yeah. Well, you go 10 miles south of me, and they wish they'd had all corn and all soybeans, and but they got two rains we never got here, amounted to 6 inches of water, and so they had the numbers they say. You just sit there and like, you got to be kidding me.
right.
It's just unbelievable. Corn Belt yield. We had a
Hmm.
guy here today saying up that were like, he says he's the best in the 28 years he's been watching and selling seed and stuff. The best corn year he's ever seen in Eastern Kansas. And he says, unbelievable number of guys would have 90 to 100 bushel, 90 to 100 acre fields make over 300. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That's,
No wonder why corn is not worth a darn
there
thing.
you go. But yeah, we move around. And one of the things that I've tried 60-inch corn. I'm going to try some more of that again this year. Uh, I got a better plan than I did the first time. Better, and part of it's just coming up with some equipment that'll make it work. That's when you start doing things like that. You got to do it. There's two ways you can do it. You can try to maybe get something expensive or do it cheap
Yeah.
or somewhere in the middle. But Jason Mock, I think, has a real good idea. Just he puts together special planters so he can do this wheat soybean thing he's doing. And so was going to do the wheat thing this year like Jason did, and the weather decided, we're not going to let you do that. So, you know how it is. It's just a lot of things. You have lots of grand plans.
Hmm. Hmm.
You got to get them set up. And one of the things, we've been doing been doing biologicals for about 5 years. Last 2 years, I've been doing my own using the IMO system, and I haven't quite got that dialed in, working just perfect. But boy, when it works, it really works. I had the consistency. Let's put it that way. Being consistent with
Okay.
it, and that might be the way I'm growing it. Making it. It's a like everything. You just got to learn how to get it work just right.
Right.
I listen to some of the other guys that Jay Young talk about what he does and all the work he goes to, and it's like it's not as easy as they say.
No, that's
But I honestly, Tyrell, I'll tell you something I honestly believe true is I don't think you can buy stuff. I'm not saying you can't, but I think it's really hard to buy something and bring it to your farm. I really think there is something to this where you're growing it yourself or working with people or using stuff that's very close to your community that works with your soil. I think I've
I,
seen.
I think it's all like you just said, you haven't quite got it dialed in perfectly yet. Uh, and no matter what you're doing, no matter how cheap it is that you're putting together on your own, it's still costing you something. Especially time. It's at least going to cost you time. And and yeah, I mean, I think there's yeah, I think you can buy it, but I'm not saying that if you got the time, you got the energy, you got the resources to do it on your own, by all means. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think there might be something to it that is better. I don't know. I think
Yeah,
there's so much we're learning in the last
yeah.
5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, I buy some stuff for some guys out west, and they're kind of in the same soils, and they do the same thing. And it, I see some things work with theirs, but same thing. I haven't got the consistency
Hmm.
happening every time, and that's what you got to do. I guess that's the goal.
Right, right. And it's hard to get consistency when you're dealing with a living product.
Oh boy, yeah.
I mean, so in your area, are there? I mean, you just said a lot of. So is Milo still grown, or are you guys pretty much in the corn soybean area, or is there still some wheat and Milo grown?
Um, I'm on. If you're going to grow milo here in eastern Kansas, you better have a dryer, and you better have a way to store it yourself. Because I I know that as I go west, I talk to my friends. Let's say 50 miles west of me and on, and when you start getting to Milo country, they're not so particular about moisture, and the elevators will take it. You cannot find an elevator around here that will take Milo in the fall. That's
Hmm.
100% zero. So if you don't have some way to dry it and store it, and they want it 14 when you bring it to them. So
And that's
that's my,
hard in your environment is what you're saying to get it down that low.
this is the first year in my life that I was able to cut Milo and not dry it
Wow.
since I started farming.
Well, so just so you know, folks, that's how dry our fall was this year.
Yeah, yeah, it was really dry. Yeah,
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. We're talking 12% moisture Milo.
we
That's
had a
crazy.
guys around here. I mean, we weren't great by any means, but we were kind of just one of those for the summer. We were kind of hanging on. We were just hanging on, hanging on, hanging on, and had some timely rains. And double crop Milo looked like it was going to be 60 bushel Milo. I mean, it looked really good going into September, and we missed a rain in September, and double crop Milo droughted out September, October. Full season Milo was droughting out. We didn't have to wait
Oh,
for freeze for it to be dying. That's how dry because we missed that one rain that we shall not name in September. And we were dry from I don't know, I'd have to look from beginning of September till that last week of October when we went through a wet cycle there, October, November, first week of
right.
November.
Yeah.
Yeah, Milo droughted out in September. I'm not that old, but I've never seen Milo drought out in September. August, sure, not September.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we're not going to grow any Milo. Well, I'm only growing double crop Milo this year. Um, and it has nothing to do with anything other than our market here goes to China or it's food grade Milo.
Okay.
And till this, till everything calms down and everybody quit playing games, uh, I gotta. Anyways, they're China's not wanting to buy our Milo. So what they're doing, and the way I understand it, is they have Brazil buy it, and it goes on put on a ship to go to Brazil, but then that ship mysteriously never makes it there. It steers toward China. So that,
Yeah.
but it's sold to Brazil.
Yeah,
That's crazy, isn't it?
Brazil, China. I mean, I can see how you can get confused.
Right. But because of that, they've knocked the price down so much
Right.
that I can't make it pencil out this year. So we decided to take a growing regular, standard crop model. We're just going to do double cropping. Because double crop, it does that thing you just talked about, catches, if you're lucky, you can get your September rain, boy, you can grow some fantastic double crop milo.
Yeah. Yeah. It like I said, everything looked really good on the double crop, and it had been several years since the double crop Milo looked good. It was always last several years has been meh, but this year it looked like, oh man, they're gonna make it. They're gonna be making some real money, and yeah, it just ran out of moisture, ran out of steam. It was crazy to see. I mean,
Right.
our trans evaporation rate had to be close to 100 inches this year. It had to be because we
Whew.
just yeah. I mean, and I think normally we're like in the 70. If you look on a map, we're about 70 inches in this area for trans evaporation. So I'd hate to guess what Nick was down in Southwest Kansas if we were approaching 100. I'd hate to guess what how high his evaporation rate was. So
Yeah, that's one of those things I've discovered. I don't know, discovered. I hate to use that's not a good word. I've observed, be a better word, and it has to do with some of the things that work with fertility and the biological end. And what I've noticed is the people that have the best luck with it are in drier climates. I cannot explain that.
well, I
But
think it's more the most consistent in those climates for some reason.
right. And I think it's got something to do with what we get a lot of root disease here. And I'm wondering if that's part of my problem, something I need to address. You know, we think we've been working on it for 20 years, have good internal soil drainage. Our soils, we've got quite a few soils that they call perched water tables. So kind of like a bathtub, once it's full, and it
Oh,
never leaves. It just has to evaporate away. And I think some of our things that I see other people doing, I try it and it almost works, but doesn't. I like, man, I wish I was a little drier. My son and I remember we went through a 4 year period, which we called a drought. You would have called it excess rainfall.
yeah. Well,
Those 5 years were the best crops we grew. And as soon as it started doing this, raining too much in the spring, we started having our normal denitrification problem going on
mhm.
again.
Well, I always, our area is, I don't know, 26 to 30, anywhere in that window, you're well within normal. I think long-term average probably is about 30 inches. Um, but so yeah, but I can assure you that yeah, we've been short of moisture. I think that this is either third or fourth year, I can't remember. And yeah, it just
I
makes,
guess
I mean,
that's what we've noticed too. Third or fourth
yeah,
year short.
yeah.
I mean,
And,
not like you, but it's short being that it's not coming at the normal time
right.
when it makes our
Right.
crop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's we might have because of that November, end of October, November stuff. I'd have to look, I have it somewhere. We might have got pretty close to our average. But those October, November rains don't do a whole hell of a lot of good for us on the 2024 crop year. I mean, maybe it'll hang around long enough to have a positive impact on the 2025 crop. But I've talked about this with some other guys, and I mean, again, you've got years of experience. Does it seem to you that the moisture doesn't hang around as long as it used to? Like we don't say like our soil doesn't seem to stay wet or moist as long with a good rain as maybe it once did.
I Yes, if I can get enough residue on the surface, then it does last longer. But the longer is about 3 days over everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If, if it's bare, I mean, and I'm not talking about bare because there's still residue there, but I'm
Hmm.
talking about, I don't know how well you know Rick Bieber.
I have not had the pleasure to meet him. I'm well aware of him, but I haven't had the
Yeah,
pleasure.
good friend. And we were in Ireland, and they were looking at it was in a wheat field, and everybody was admiring this beautiful wheat and how nice it was, and they were really just getting into their no-till system. And I'm not even going to make up how many years, but then he hadn't been doing it for like, the insurance rep had been doing it for 20 years. It was more like last 5 or 10. And they were talking, and Rick, he stands there and he looks, he's like, he says, he goes, now as you look over there, that looks really beautiful, lots of residue, perfect cover. He says, but that's what a human sees. And he says, I want everybody to stand up and look straight at their feet. And he says, that's what a raindrop sees when it's falling from the sky. And if you don't see 100% residue cover, then you are compacting your ground. The raindrop is hitting at full force, splashing, causing, because one of the things they was having over there was a fungus problem. And he says, that's what causes your fungus problem in these different, there was a lupin or something was another field we were in. And that raindrop comes down and it needs that. Same thing Carlos was telling me in 98. I didn't have enough residue. And Rick was just explaining it though from the view of a raindrop. And the next time, Tyrell, when you're out, stand out there and look straight down and imagine what that raindrop's going to hit.
Right.
And it will blow you away because I've done that and I'm like, I need more residue. When you look at it like a cross, like we do from our human perspective, it looks like it's 100% covered. But when you look straight down, you lack a lot.
Yeah.
And so that would be the goal. So a raindrop has to hit something before it hits the soil. That was his story.
Yep.
I think it's a good way to look at your soil because they look different. It's kind of like taking a shovel and digging into them, and like, wow, there's a transition line there I've never noticed before. You'll sometimes see that.
Yep. Well, I can attest to. I mean, I get to go out on lots of people's ground and I pull soil samples, so I get to go all over hell and see all sorts of different situations. And I can tell you that ground that has been no-tilled is always, you can pull it longer into a dry spell than ground that hasn't been, or if it has cover. And when it starts getting cold, the last ground to freeze is the stuff that has been no-till and has residue on it. Even in fields that are maybe, I mean, I was on a field just yesterday that had been probably turbo tilled, I'm assuming, corn stalks and planted and drilled wheat into it. And where there was still some corn residue sitting on the surface, you could scoot that out of the way and get a hand probe in the ground in some places. If it was bare dirt, you couldn't. So the whole,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the old adages for some areas of the country is, oh, we can't no-till because our ground stays too cold. It's like your ground gets colder because of the tillage in the winter. Your ground will not freeze as much if you're not tilling. I mean, I have seen that just from
Right.
running hand probes. Is no-till is so much easier to do anything with when it comes to pulling soil samples.
Oh gosh, yeah. I've seen the same thing. Yeah, you go out there, it's bare, you can't do nothing. You find a spot got a little straw,
Ah,
like where Ben run Rosie's hay. That'll always be. You can just lift that up and just whoosh right down through it.
right, right.
Soil life is still producing enough heat to, it's insulated and it produces just enough heat to keep from freezing.
Mhm.
Pretty cool deal.
Um, what's been I mean, I know you mentioned equipment a little bit. You mentioned a lot of this stuff already. Kind of the questions I had. I'd say, would it be fair to say that the guys from South America have been a very big influence on your journey on this that you've been on?
It made you, one of the things we learned down there that they stressed a lot was keeping your disc sharp. Because they were rolling covers, and then they would, they tried to plant, they had their roller the same size as their seeder, and so if they tried to follow that roller with the planter, so they were, the stalks all laying the same way. And I remember we asked a question, we're like, well, what do you do at the end? And like, oh, we got enough weight and the discs are sharp enough, it'll cut right through it. And then they would just cut across at a 90-degree angle. And that was one of the times that I remember him, I don't know how well you knew Matt, but Matt got the big proponent of plenty of weight on your cedar to keep it in the ground. And that was one of the things that we picked up down there. And there's another thing I picked up, and I still do to this day, is anytime I plant with a drill machine, I sometimes do it with my regular planter, that always go at 3 to 5 degrees off north, south, east, west. Well, you know how we normally like to have these nice, beautiful straight rows. And what they said, if you would change that every time you plant that direction, that levels your soil and makes it easier to harvest and do all that, keep it from getting ditches in it. If you got a rut started, like like a tractor impression with, and then as you start going across at an angle, it starts breaking that up and keeps your field. So ever since then, every time I plant, I try 3 to 5 degrees off, and once in a while I'll even go just straight. I mean, I don't never not go straight, and then that allows me, especially like uh, uh, usually when I plant corn, I try planting it straight. That wheat, soybean, grain sorghum, because I plant it in 15-inch rows. Everything is, I go at some angle. I've tried greater angles, and they were right. The 3 to 5 degrees seems to be kind of, but you had to test. I've done 15 and 20, and I've tried all types of things
Well,
trying to level out the soil.
I'm sure by only doing a slight angle, you probably don't notice the ruts because you're not really going against them. So you're just going against them enough to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, but it probably isn't a rough ride that way. It would be
Right.
would
Doesn't
it
affect your seed and soil contact, the seeding depth.
right.
And if you start going any more than that, well, then what you just mentioned
Yeah.
does come into
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, if I go at 93 degrees on a field one year, the next year I'll try to go at 87 or
So
85,
you're just oscillating back and forth one way or the other,
oscillating back
basically.
and forth. Then once in a while I just go straight. You need
Yeah.
straight
Yep.
in there once in a while.
Hmm.
Yeah. That Matter of fact, here's something. Since we do a lot of our own spraying, every once in a while, you get into a pickle and you have to hire somebody. And I will guarantee you, it's never failed yet. The guy will say, "That's the smoothest field I've ever sprayed."
Well, I guess
I've only,
that
yeah,
that's something so simple that makes total sense, but I have never heard that before. But
yeah,
that makes perfect sense. I mean, if you can't drive straight like I can't drive straight, you don't got to worry about it. You'll always be slightly changing your angle.
yeah, yeah. Well, with auto steer, once you set it, you kind of, and one of the things now with the planter, you do that, and I got row shut off, so you're not wasting any seed. And on a drill, sometimes you might go 4 mile across the field, double plant more and more and more as you go. But to be honest with you, it's usually only one round total to finish up that little
Hmm.
triangle.
Right.
And here's benefit number two that I was told down there. The reason they do this, that when they're cutting soybeans, if you plant it at an angle, if they're all straight, the header just keeps pushing them and then they fold left and right. But if you're cutting them at this angle, this bean here starts to fall off, and then this next bean comes up and knocks it in, and you have less header loss if you plant at an angle.
See, like I said, years of wisdom, years of experience, Keith.
Yeah, well, I had somebody else tell me that.
Well,
I said, I
hey,
remember, when you hear somebody say that, you sit there and like, and then when you sit in the combine and you watch it, you can see it happening. I mean, you can see beans start to fall off the header, and then because they're not lined up, straight with you.
right,
They're at an angle.
right,
Because I cut at the straight. I want you to know I cut straight. I don't cut the same direction I planted. I do the east, west, north, south harvesting,
right.
but I plant at an angle, and then and literally it just like, I want to say it's good for 2 or 3 bushel an acre. That's what I was going to make that up. A bushel for damn sure. So, if you
Okay.
had 100 acres and you picked up 100 bushel, but you only planted 2 extra bushel to do that, why are you worrying about the extra bushels that you planted? Or,
Yeah,
what I'm trying to get at when you
yeah,
see,
yeah,
that's the problem. Because, oh, I'm overplanting, da, da, da. Like, man, at the end of the year, you're making this up.
yeah. Well, and
I
like you
got another,
said, if you're keeping field, what's it worth to keep the field smoother? I mean,
right.
what's that worth to guys? Because the last thing you want to have to do is go work it. Uh,
Well, there's a bunch of things, Tyrell, and if you sit down and you can come up with another one or two. But when the water's moving across the field, it's more of a smooth. It don't have little places to run. You're smoother when you're driving. You're harvesting. You're gaining a little. Just it's not big. It's the little things that make you the
right.
money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a compounding effect though, with one little slight practice change that,
Right.
huh? Yeah. Like I said, well, hell no. Why not just say it'll gain you 2 to 3 bushels? Just roll with it. Who's
Yeah. Just make up something. I was going
yeah.
to go on this. The reason I picked that because I'm picking on poor Rick Beaver, but he told us this story. I'll go through it quick. Him and a buddy needed planters. You know how he lives up in South Dakota, farms lots of acres. So him and his buddy decided to get planter, save some money. The guy, dealer said, "Well, if you both buy a planter, I'll get X off." And so they bought twin planters. They was exactly the same. Only Rick planted twice as many acres as his. And Rick said he was just about to finish up this field he had. I've been on this field, and when he said he was about to finish it up, I'm like, "What's 4 miles from one end to the other?" I don't know how far back it goes, but it's 4 miles north and south.
Hmm.
And it's not all, there's, deals. But anyways, he called his friend up and it was supposed to rain. And Rick says, I can't remember the guy's name, said, "Hey, would you come over and help me plant?" He said, "If you come plant, I'd be done tonight. I know I can plant half of it, but if you come and help." So the guy came, they did exactly, remember, same planters, same seeds, and they had all the steer. So I don't remember who was leading, but when one guy planted, he jumped over. So then the next guy just went between his planting, and they did this whole big distance. And Rick's one of these guys that tests everything. And when he said he got to harvest, he thought, "Well, I'm just going to harvest mine and his separate." So he did this all these acres, and when he got done, there was a 3 bushel difference between Rick's planter and the other guy's planter, and the other guy's planter made consistently 3 bushel of the acre more than Rick. Everything being the same.
Hmm.
They were planting right beside each other the whole time they planted. And Rick said, he's like, "What? How could that be? How can there be 3 bushel consistently over this huge area?" And so he went over to the guy's planter and got to checking it out. And the guy's planter had uh, the opening discs were less wore out than Rick's by quarter of an inch, half inch, some number.
Hmm.
And so Rick decided, well, crying out loud, I can't believe this is you know, that could be it. And so he said that had to be it because everything else was the same. There was no different wear in the gauge tires or nothing. And so Rick discovered over the years that at around 1,000 to 1,400 acres, his disc had wore out just enough that started affecting feeding depth. And that started affecting other things with plant growth. That was 3 bushel the acre. And so he said he sat down and 3 bushel the acre, he had 1,000 acres, that's 3,000 bushel. And at that time, I think corn was, we'll just say it's $3 for fun. This was quite a few years ago. That's 9 grand.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
cost him $200 to put new discs on. So
Right.
he actually stops around 1,200 acres and puts all brand new opening discs on and then starts planting again. He stops planting and puts new ones on. And he told me that story, and I thought, At first, I was kind of like you, like, what? That doesn't make sense. And I got to thinking about it, and that answered a question that Matt Hagney and I had talked about for a long time, and my son. Why our planter worked so good when we first started out, rebuild it the first of the year, and 2,000 acres or whatever it is when you're at the end of the year. My son was always bitching, you're not planting the seed deep enough. It's not covering it up right. And it wore out that quarter of an inch was affecting. And you know what I do? I go by a measurement. Matt come up with a measurement. But when it gets to that, new discs go on. There ain't no more try to get a few more acres or nothing. We just put it on because that many dollars you can
Yeah.
afford to put new discs on.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. It's little things that make you money farming. Not, I don't think it's anything big.
Well, it sounds to me like you came up with Thompson closing wheel. Sounds to me like you need to come up with a little heavier duty, longer lasting disc for guys that can get at least a season
But
out of them instead of half a season.
actually, the new ones we're selling, and just open. I'm part of Exapta. My son and I are part owners of that, and that's one of the things that Matt worked on for years is coming up with the best steel, best wearing disc. We tried all different thicknesses and everything, and we kind of come up with oh, whatever the brand we're selling now at 3.5 millimeters are the ones that for the money last the longest, do the best. And then they'll last a season now. I get a whole season. I don't have to stop in the middle of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, you either got to make them to where they last longer, or you got to make them cheaper so people don't cringe when they got to go change them after 1,000
Exactly.
acres.
Right. Yeah. Well, mostly on a drill, the cringe is just changing them.
Yeah,
They're pain.
yeah.
Yeah. A planter is pretty easy. But Rick had these guys, bunch of guys work for him, and he said when they got there, they just he actually has totes of disc blades in his shop.
Jeez.
Not crazy because he figured out how much money he was making. So I'm not even gonna say he found up to thousands of acres. And his son, well, Rick doesn't farm so much anymore. His son's doing it, but a lot of acres. And uh, he says it's just they make so much money changing them. And when they get there, they just bring the truck out there and the disc. And he said you get 5 guys going, and couple guys go and take everything off, and a couple other guys come along, start putting everything together, and then have another guy come and start tightening everything up. He said in an hour you're done.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so said good
Well,
money for an hour's work.
yeah. Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, if it's a when when you think of it, oh, 2 bushels isn't nothing. Well, if it's something as simple as equipment, 2 bushels is a hell of a lot when you start adding up the acres. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean
I think
it.
that's probably the one thing that myself included. I'm not going to throw myself. I'm not saying I don't do this. The hardest thing we do fight is keeping your equipment in super good shape.
Well, it's
You
so
know that.
expensive. It's so expensive to keep it in good shape.
Oh, that's yeah, 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 yeah. That and it just bothers you. But if you're losing money because you're
Yeah.
not keeping it in good shape, uh, the engineers designed feeders and all equipment to work perfect when it's new. And once it gets away from there, it quits working perfect. Well, we noticed that everybody knows that it's not working right. I
Hmm.
mean, you hear people like, "Oh, those drills, they don't plant like they used to." Well, when
Yeah.
you first got it, it planted perfect.
Right.
All you got to do is get it back to that position. So that
Right.
spending that money is for keeping the banker at bay is worth it, as far as
Hmm.
I'm concerned.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, you got what comes with years of experiences, years of tidbits, just little tidbits here and there that you've picked up over the years, and they're not even complicated. They're simple, basic stuff that pay off. So I mean, hell,
Yeah,
you're with the discs, with the angle. I mean, shit, you're already at 5 bushel guaranteed on your corn. Um,
yeah, yeah. I'm not. This isn't every year, but we invariably will, just by listening to people, and my son and I've kind of come to just the things that we do, and not any one thing, but all the things just added together on soybeans looks like that's a consistent 3 to 5 bushel per year per acre improvement over what we hear. The kind of like common year people talk, and you kind of take it in general, like, we kind of like, with especially people that are farming right next to you. That's the best one. They're right there. They don't tell you exactly, and you don't tell them exactly, but you're both not either lying and just not being super truthful. And it's like, I think we beat them. Or you can go out and I've gone out and done stand counts, ear counts and stuff, like, there's no way they beat us. There's just, I know what, I got corn. I know what my corn made. I did the same sort of deal on theirs, and it was showing that much difference, or the soybean. Beans are a little harder to count. You just have to go by pod count.
Right.
And then there's seed size, so many things in there that's variable. But we kind of think 3 to 5 bushel, all these little things we do, that's what it kind of adds up at the end of the year. Because every once in a while somebody will say something, and I'll sit there and like, holy shit, I thought I did. I thought we had terrible. I thought it was terrible on my end. That would even be worse if I had. How
Yeah.
somebody will accidentally just say something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, geez, the old Johnson place. I can't believe it only did something. And you're farming right next to the Johnson place. Like, well, we weren't that. Not always
Yeah.
true, but more. I would say 80% of the time that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so what countries have you all been to over the years, looking at what other guys are doing, uh, seeing how they're doing things on their place, or maybe you've gone and you've shared some of what you guys are doing.
Done both. I went one year, 2017. I went with Rick Bieber and Bud Davis. We went clear around the world. We ended up was in England, Ireland, Finland, Australia, and Tasmania. And that was, and I'll tell you, interesting farmers are exactly the same no matter where you go. There is literally no difference. I mean, I think that was the most amazing thing to me was like, we talked about the same thing, have the same problem. Everybody has poor soil. Everybody doesn't get enough rain. It's too damn hot, too damn cold. The cattle don't work right. So, it was fun to be. And then the
Government
soils were different,
government
maybe.
policy is crap.
Yeah, there's government policies suck.
Yeah.
And I remember in Argentina, them telling us, like, and this was before it changed, like, well, we don't get any subsidies, that. We have to figure out a way how to make money. And that's the reason we're no-tilling. And that's the reason we're doing these rotations. Because we have found that if we don't do this, we're going to go broke. This is why we do these things. And then they changed the policy in Argentina and screwed up the farming community down here.
Yep. So
I think it went from.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
No, it's just, and another thing they had down there, their farms were, which I thought was interesting, was normally in great big blocks. And that was just the way it had been dealt out when the country started.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't unusual to be on a farm of 5,000 acres all together.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and that's the reason this cattle thing worked so good. So
Yeah.
they'd have, like, I know it sounds crazy, but they'd have these electrified perimeter wires. Usually there were 5 wires electrified around the whole farm. And then that made it easy to do their interior breaks. And then and I'll explain the long-term breaks they do with
Right.
cattle. So that made it super easy to move this cattle thing. It was unbelievable. We was on one farm that they actually it was so big, it actually had literally a city. They had their own city in the farm for all the workers and stuff.
Right. Right.
I'm trying to remember how many thousands and thousands of hectares it was. It was huge. I couldn't hardly believe it would be. I mean, there's places probably not the same way. But the continuous part was the part that got
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I
But
thought that was cool.
that was kind of it didn't seem to matter the size of the operation. If they were only farming 2,000 acres, it wasn't uncommon for it to be 2,000 contiguous acres.
Exactly, 2,000
Yeah, yeah.
contiguous acres.
And that would, yeah, like you said, that would make livestock integration so much easier. That would make everybody so much more efficient when it comes to harvest and planting because they don't have to road 5 miles this way, 8 miles that way for 80 acres and go back the other way. And yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah. That was one cool thing. And I must say, every place else must more like where we are. You know, you had you might farm 2,000 acres, but it was in 15 fields, or 20 or 25. And when you
yeah.
got over in Ireland, England, it was a lot. It was that way, a lot smaller fields.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Interesting rules. And I think in England, where we were at, I can't speak for all of England. We were north of London, oh, 80 to 100 miles. To give you an idea. And I couldn't believe how many rock. I mean, they literally were farming rock.
Hmm.
Watch that Clarkston Farms. You ever watch it
Don't
on
think
Netflix?
so. Oh,
Yeah, I think it's Netflix. It's either Netflix or Prime, one of the two. Clarkston Farm, Jeremy Clarkston.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
That's what that soil looks like. It looks like they're farming rock with some dirt in between the rock
Hmm. Well, I mean,
or soil.
when they've been farming it for thousands of years,
Yeah,
I mean, just yeah, it blows your mind some of the it blows your mind that they're able to grow crops, period, with how old their soil is and how long it's been in production. So,
yeah.
um,
And an interesting thing in Finland, I'm not, just because this sounds crazy, but they were where we were at in Finland. They were growing corn. They put this plastic down, and plant corn in it. We were at the same latitude as Anchorage, Alaska.
what were they growing the corn for? Livestock feed or
They
sweet
got the
corn?
idea they had to have corn for no, they thought the idea they needed this corn for their dairy cattle. So it's going to all this, and then they plow this stupid plastic up. It was the most. I was going to say I thought it was the most horrendous looking deal I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't hardly believe it. Just so they could grow corn, they wanted to grow corn that bad. They planted it under plastic, same latitude as Anchorage, Alaska. Because you got to remember though that see the what is it? The Gulf Stream comes up and
Yep.
it comes around and it keeps them warm, more or
Yeah.
less. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not warm. Because we asked, like, well, where do you go snow skiing? And they had to, like, literally get to the Arctic Circle where they could go snow skiing
Hmm.
in Finland.
Right.
That's where we were at. I'm not saying I don't know nothing about, because we were near Helsinki and, that, when you tell a story like you've been there and you know everything, you don't know nothing. The real truth. But they
Uh,
did have good food. That part is true.
good food.
Yeah, the food was excellent. I loved eating that what we had over there. I see why if you go if you go out of this country, and it's not every country, and you come back to the United States, you will realize how unhealthy we are. You see, I thought Australia was sort of like I thought Ireland. There was a big difference between English and Ireland people looking. That they more I it just seemed like to me they were healthier looking in England. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my description. I don't know. All I know is when I come back, every time I've left the United States, I've come back and I walk in. You've been somewhere and you just look around like, holy crap, what are we doing wrong here? We are doing something wrong. That's
Hmm.
a fact. What it
Hmm.
is, I'm not going to, I don't know exactly. You and I both have suspicions what it's causing it. But is that what it is? I don't know.
Hmm.
Could be lifestyle. Could be a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's what I would say is there's a lot of factors at play from food policy, ag policy, lifestyle, um, economic, socioeconomic situations.
Yeah, I think it's like soil health.
Yeah,
There's so many little things you've got to do to get it right and to get really good soil health. That saying this is the one is the wrong
yeah,
way to look at it. It's
yeah.
kind of like what we've been talking. It's the system. You got to get
Hmm.
your if you got your system right, then I think it'll start working. That's the part you've got to work on. And I'm sure you're like me. That's the part you tweak every year. You look at it and you don't say, well, the nose till system sucks. You don't say that. You look at it and you say, what do I need to do to make this better?
Yeah.
What went wrong that I can fix? I think that's how I look at it.
You usually quite a bit when I'm looking at it, but hey. Uh what do you see? I mean, you've been in this field for, like you said, since 72. Um have you been, I mean, you can always say, "Oh no, I wish there's more adoption." But what has been your perspective on the adoption of, say, no-till cover crops? Has it gone at a slower pace or a faster pace than you thought? I mean, what's kind of been your perspective on it?
It's going at a slower pace than one would want, but I think it's probably going at the pace how society changes. It takes, it's generational changes, and it takes a while to understand why you do what you do. I got a grandson. My son grew up, and I was just when he just kind of like when he started farming, we just given up the tillage thing, and he's done a few tillage things, but I would say 98% of his life not around any type of tillage. My grandsons have never seen anything but no-till, so they think that's normal. They see anybody else do anything else, it's like, oh, people. That's how long it takes. That's how long it takes. It's just, I don't think it has anything to do with stubbornness or that. I don't anything. It's just you learn something, and that's kind of where unless you really think you're going to make a huge change and want to, you just kind of keep doing the same thing. I be honest with you, on our farm, I was like about 3 years ago, I decided I'm going to quit making decisions. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to let my son make all the decisions because I have got to a place I've noticed that I was stuck in a damn rut. I know it's actually, you might not believe that. It's like I was having a hard time jumping to a new change. And so
Hmm.
he does things that sometimes I'll sit there and like, man, I don't know if that's a good idea. That's like, okay, I will keep my mouth shut because he's not ever going to learn unless he makes a mistake or he does something right and it turns out like he thought it would. And it's got to be his decision. I'm just going to let him go. I've done what I can do. I still like to go to conferences and learn. We're going to, of course, be at No-Till on the Plains, and that's. I've been to a lot of conferences, and that's still my favorite one. I really love what goes on there. Uh, I've been 2 or 3 times. I remember in 2006 when Adamir was here and brought up the cover crop thing got started. That's the year the cover crops really got started in the United States because the things that the people in South and North Dakota took back and started testing up there. There were like 6 or 7 farmers all did exactly the same cover crop test. And I don't know if you've heard the stories about
Yep.
they go up
Yep.
there. The only thing that lived was the mixes, and
Yep.
and they and every all 7 farms it was the same way. No matter which of the 7 farms you went to, it was the same. They saw exactly the same thing, but that they learned from Adamir how to go about this testing routine. Um, the other one I remember that was a mind blower. It was an AIM symposium, and the guy was talking about how plants talk to each other.
Okay.
I remember walking out of that room, my head was literally spinning on my neck.
You were heading to the bar.
Yeah, we were headed to the bar because that is right. And you know, the way he was telling it, you know, you walked out there and like, he's right. That is exactly what's going on.
Right.
They are talking to each other somehow. And now, you know, from that, you and I could spend hours if somebody wants to
Yeah.
about how mycorrhizal bacteria. And Dr. James White's got the deal where plant roots are herding bacteria like they're cattle. Uh, have you seen that one?
I haven't. No.
You need to look that one up. That'll make you sit there like, what the heck is going on here?
Well,
Dr. James White is just unbelievable with some things that he's researching, and some of that original research came out of Australia on
well,
that bacteria being herded around like animals.
I think there's I think there's some, I don't know. If I say anything in any of these discussions, people take it with a grain of salt. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Don't take it as gospel. But
I'm in the same boat.
yeah, but I think I understand just enough to know that I don't know, but I know that there are certain things I need to do as best I can to promote these things that are going to happen with the soil biology. But I don't know that I have the brain power to understand it all.
Right. I find it more amazing, and I
Yeah,
am like you. I don't need to know. I just know it needs to happen, and then how do you make it happen?
yeah, yeah,
I don't need to know the nuts and bolts of what's going on down there. That's for somebody else to research and tell me that this is what needs to happen, and then here's how you can make it happen, and then
yeah.
work out using your system to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah, the
Uh,
more I've learned, the more I know I don't know anything.
well, so I've had this discussion with a couple of people this last year, or in 2024 I did. I guess you'll be the first one I've had it with in 2025. But we hear a lot on chemical use as far as Roundup, and it's so detrimental to soil biology, and it's killing our soils, and it's poisoning us. Uh, I've had this conversation that I would almost argue that it's that large amounts of NPK fertilizer are being more detrimental to our soil than any herbicides that we're using. That I really think um, that judicial use of herbicides has less of an impact than using high rates of NP and K on our farm ground.
I go agree with you. If I have to choose between tillage and using chemicals,
Hmm.
tillage is a humanity killer.
Right.
Tillage, and it's proven. I mean, there's all types of books. You know, David Montgomery wrote
Yep.
the book Dirt.
Yeah.
Perfect example of what happens to humanity when you use tillage.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. Judicious use of chemicals. Don't rely on them. Cover crops. But like, here's something we've been doing the last. I started planting this about 3 years ago. Planting green soybeans, green. No big deal. I've been doing it since I didn't even know there was such a word. And when the first time I heard it, I was like, well, I've been doing that since 2000.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing until I heard somebody talking about it. But what I was doing in those days is we would plant the soybeans into a living something and then kill it that day. The last 3 years, I've been planting. The first year I only did 14 acres, and they was the best beans I had. And we waited. I was told my brother, said, well, don't spray those. Wait, let them go for 2 or 3 weeks. You know, let them come up out of the ground, get 2 or 3 trifoliates going before you spray them. And they were those enlist beans where you could use Roundup, Liberty, and that 2,4-D stuff. And I said, don't put any residual on. Just do that. Those ended up being our best beans. Huh, that's interesting. So the next year we did about 35, 40 acres. And again, they weren't our very best, but they were right up there and super clean and no residual. And the reason we like the no residual, because now you can come back with anything for a cup.
Yeah.
No worry. So this must be our, I'm trying to think how many years, because the last 2 years we've gone 100% doing that using just, I know you're using an enlist bean, and I'm using some Roundup one time, some Liberty one time, some 2,4-D one time. Once in a while, we'll have a field have a breakout for, I don't know what, didn't have a good cover. But, I'm going to guess like 80% of the time we don't have to go back for a second spray. So you're only spraying one time and no residuals. And you can plant any cover you want for grazing or just to grow. It's been working really good. The only thing that I have learned is that as long as it's raining, that works really great.
Yeah.
But then once it starts drying down, you better get out there and get that baby killed. Because one year we didn't do that, and that was the year that the beans didn't do as good as the rest.
Yeah.
But last year, as soon as we noticed it quit raining, the week about 3 to 4 weeks is about how long we wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do this.
Yeah.
But you can't just think that you're going to go 4 weeks. You might only go a week, and it's like it ain't going to rain. It ain't predicting rain. I'm going to kill that cover. I'm going to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, everyone has said it. It's all you got to manage it. You can't manage it by the calendar. You got to you honestly got to manage by the weather more than the calendar. In any of that
Exactly.
stuff.
Yep.
So
always the weather. Always the weather.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you brought it up just a little bit. You mentioned no-till on the plains. Like you said, you've been a board member a couple of times. I mean, again, you've probably, of anybody that I've talked to so far, you've had more experience with no-till on the plains than anybody, and you've been a part of the board for a lot of years. How have you seen the no-till on the plains evolve as far as an organization, as far as a conference?
That's interesting to think about. One of the things that I saw happening at No-Till on the Plains was, especially when we started bringing people in from different disciplines. I mean, people that would never talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like a biology person would never talk to a fertility people, that kind of a deal. And I remember one year when it was still in Salina, and we had this motel room. We just took over the whole hotel for all the speakers and everything. And at night we'd sit down in this room and all speakers would talk. And I remember one year there was this, I'm not even going to name names, genders or nothing. It's just these people. And this one person, I don't like that person over there. This stupid son of a bitch. They don't know what they're talking about. And so I remember thinking, well, I'm going to introduce them to each other. So, as it didn't happen the first night. The second night it worked out. The person that didn't think they liked this person was coming by, and they said hi to me. I said, "Hey, sit down right here with us." And we sat down there and talked. And these two got to talking to each other. And I'm going to guess they never left that table all night. They sat there for hours talking to each other. Other people came in and joined. And all of a sudden, you saw 3 or 4 disciplines talking about what they were seeing, and the other guy telling what they were seeing and how that fit in with their deal. And they came up with a new idea right there in front of you, watching it.
Yeah.
And this happened time and time again. When you start getting different, you see it out in the hallway when people start talking to each other. They start, the other one that I know on the plains, and as I'm sure all conferences, say you're talking, you say da da da, and I'm sitting there like, what Tyrell meant by that? How do you pull that off? So I stop and talk to you in the hallway, and you fill in the blank, and then you learn like, oh, I probably need to add that to my talk. The people talk to you and keep basically asking the same questions over and over. So those things, just bringing different disciplines together, uh, ideas. I think on the board, I think the hardest thing was always trying to come up with something that was, we call it way out there. Like uh, when we first started, it was all about no-till and crops.
Right.
And I went on with Steve Schaefer before he became the on No Till on the Plains. He was Farm Bureau. Then he took me on. We went on some Farm Bureau deal. Met these two brothers up by Junction City, and they were talking about what they were doing, and they had a big cattle operation, and they were showing how they were working the cattle, and they had it going with their no-till, and they weren't working the ground, and they were planting these, what they called them. They were just crop. They didn't call it cover crop. They, something they plant for the cattle to eat. And I'm standing there, and I'm like, I remember thinking, we are missing half of the farmers in the United States because here's these two guys, and they're farming, but they also got cattle. And I remember coming to the board meeting and telling this story I just told you. And I said, I think we need to invite these brothers to speak. And there was like pushback. We aren't about livestock. And my good friend Matt Hagney just did not like livestock at all. He was on the board, and he really like, that's stupid. I don't think it's a good idea. And I worked, I'm kind of persistent. And so I kept like, these guys need to come. We are missing. And we came, and you want to know something interesting? That was the most highest rated two speakers at the conference that year. Because there were so many people there that farmed, but they also had livestock.
Yep.
And then to listen to another way to raise livestock than what they were doing, because it was kind of out of the box. Like, who thought that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the first time livestock was brought in for no-till on the plains, was that year.
Do you know what
And
year
only
that
because
was?
I don't remember.
Roughly.
It had to be early 2000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
long time back.
Yeah.
Long time back. Yeah, I could probably look back, and I'm trying to think. I could probably find that out. It's not. I don't remember details like that.
Yeah.
I just remember I did it
Yeah. Yeah.
at some time in my life.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things that again, integrating livestock is nothing new. It's just
Exactly.
it kind of I'm not gonna say we've always done it the best historically, but a lot of that was due to technology. A lot of that was due to technology available as far as fencing technology. But
Sure.
nowadays fencing technology isn't the issue. The issue now is honestly the biggest single hurdle in my mind is water. That's the single biggest issue with integrating livestock is water.
Yep.
But if you can
Yep.
figure
That's our
that
big one.
out, yeah, you can figure out the water situation. It is not hard to manage livestock with electric fence and do it very well, very easily.
Yeah. And my experience with electric fence is it's better than regular fence
Yeah,
because
I
you get an
know.
animal trained to electric fence, unless it goes dead, they stay in.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
I've
like
had
what I told Ben, the first No Till on the Plains conference I went to was 2014. I mean, just from 2014 to when I went back again in 22 or 21, whatever it was. It's probably 22. The conference evolved in that span of time as far as type
right.
of speakers, topics covered, um, and just yeah, like you said, it's again, I'm not a paid spokesperson. I'm not associated with No Till on the Plains in any way, shape, or fashion. I just big supporter of it. I mean, that's how I met Keith Thompson was through No Till on the Plains. It's been an organization that has gave a lot back to me, and so
Another one we brought in, and I don't remember how this happened, but it was when we started bringing speakers in about human health, about mental health,
yeah,
those sort of things where that was like, you don't think about going to a conference, listening to somebody talk about how they got rid of their demons or things they were fighting mentally and have somebody come in. A couple of years ago, remember Jimmy Emmons had that lady came and talk about how curing diabetes by
yeah,
just feeding them
yeah,
different food. I
Yep.
mean, that's the Elaine. I think maybe the first name Elaine. Ellen. That doesn't
Uh,
matter.
Aaron Martin.
Aaron Martin. Yeah,
Yeah.
unbelievable speaker. I mean, fire. Talk about getting fired up about health. And that's not a normal
Yeah.
go to a farm conference type deal. And I think that's what No Till on the Plains offers is something so different than your kind of normal. And more conferences are doing that. But I want to say that No Till on the Plains was the first one that, to me, of going and seeing all this over the years that brought that kind of stuff in. It's like it makes us better farmers, it makes us better people. That's what it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen a
It's
huge change in the farm community because of that kind of thinking.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've been talking for a while. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to talk about or?
No, I don't even know what I want to talk about
Yeah.
because I just talk. Something comes up and then fly off onto that deal. I usually don't have I'm not at a loss for come up with some goofy thing, but now we've kind of covered all the. I don't even know what is important. I think the most important thing that I would recommend for people that are coming in, and I see this a lot of times, people think they need to have a goal, and that's great. Goals are great, but really what you need is a good system to get to your goal. If you don't have a good system, having a goal is nothing.
Mhm.
That's having a goal to me is a waste, literally a waste of time. You got to have a system in place. Think about what you want to do. You mentioned it earlier. When things don't go right, you kind of sit down and look at it like, well, how can I tweak that? So you're talking about systems. Systems is what makes no-till soil health things work. I mean, you can have a goal to be healthy and have good soil health, but that don't get you there, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Got to
Mhm.
have, got to sit down with a system, learn how it works, uh, understand it's important. You mentioned you didn't need to know the nuts and bolts, but didn't even know it was important.
Yeah.
that that's
You need to at least know some of the nuts and bolts. You don't have to know every single one though.
you don't have to know why that bacteria went up that fungi. You know what made it go that direction. You don't need that. You just need to know that if you do everything right, the bacteria goes up that fungi and brings back that nutrient the plant wants.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all you need to know. You need to put the system in place so that happens.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I think is how I look at everything
Well,
myself.
I guess we can close with this. What do you think the future of ag looks like? I know there's
Hmm.
I mean you mentioned Jason Mock. You got like Jason Mock and Zach Smith. You kind of got what they're doing there in Indiana and Iowa, I believe. You got, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple. I mean, those two guys kind of jump to my mind. Um, you got, I mean, I don't know, just the whole chemical use debate, the perennial breaks. I don't know if I would say there's going to be more and more support for that or anything, but I guess it's becoming more known about, if that's a way to put it.
Right, right. I think that system, both those systems or systems like that, have the ability. I think we're going to get away from growing just two crops in the United States. I think that's our, our probably our biggest weakness as in the farm community. Now, on top of that, if you go to the what they're talking about, where you're growing more, on the farm, is how do you get that to a so that everybody can get fed plenty of calories. And the way we're doing it now, we're getting them plenty of calories, but they're not the right kind of calories.
Yeah,
Does,
yeah,
does that make sense?
yeah,
Uh, Too highly processed. There's nothing wrong with processed food. I was one time said I made an off statement. I like don't eat processed food, and the guy said, "Well, you do peel the rind off your orange, don't you?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, that's processed. You processed it so you could just eat the orange." But then I said, Well, then what do you mean? What we with the conversation then was he says what you're talking about is when you look at a package and you look at the ingredients and you don't understand 80% of what you're reading, that's the kind of food that's not good for you. That's super highly processed. There's nothing wrong with processing food. How can we get good food? I think in this country we got the abilities here, and then it always then boils down like like in California where they're growing thousands of acres of carrots or broccoli or all that. How can we do that so they're not doing it in a so we can do that here in the
Yeah,
Midwest? I'm thinking high tunnels, under those. I don't know if you've seen them, those kind of underground greenhouses. Was in
yeah.
Brazil. Doug and I visited this greenhouses, and there must have been 1,000 acres of greenhouses, and they were grown. I think 80% of the produce for Sao Paulo. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing thing to see. And I think we could do something like this in the Midwest. We got. I'm thinking growing corn for fuel is silly. Soybeans for fuel is silly. It's not dumb or anything. It's just like there's better. Well, I think we're going to see some. Here's what I think is going to happen. We're going to go to a fuel system that's not based on fossil fuel. It'll be nuclear, portable nuclear power plants, hydrogen. There's some things coming on. They're getting battery technology better and better. I went to a meeting the other day where the guy he actually said, I wouldn't recommend buying big equipment within the next 5 years. I think small, robotic, drone type tractors, one row at a time, what's going to take over. Because you could not buy. It was like you could buy 16 of these things for like 150,000 compared to a planter. And
Yeah,
so if one of them quit running, you still had 15 rows going on, still
yeah,
being planted and still working weed. I think that's going to be one of the directions that I really believe that'll be kind of direction that didn't I sit around and talk, boy, that'd be cool. You didn't have to rely on this piece of it. Because when the planter quits, it quits. All
yeah,
16 rows quit planting.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
And
that's going to be one of the deals, different kinds of fuel systems.
well, you're looking at a $250,000 planter with a $250,000 tractor. Uh, Instead, you can buy 16-row planter for $150,000.
Right. And
I
it just
mean,
runs 24/7.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
killing weeds 24/7.
yeah.
You
Well,
just got to make sure it's got good batteries and
yeah, and then
charged
but
up.
then you start taking down some equipment depreciation or take off some of the expensive equipment. Well, okay, I don't have to cover 10,000 acres to pay for this equipment. I can make a living on
Right.
1,000 acres. I can pay for this equipment on 1,000 acres, or I can afford. We get the small equipment. We can if we are gonna grow corn, we can go do an interseed on that corn, and it's not a well, how the hell do we accomplish this um, type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
It just opens up the possibilities get to be really interesting and really intricate of what you could do. Maybe then you could because you're going to be running smaller equipment. You could run corn, soybean, corn, soybean, corn, soybean within the field with 2 rows of soybeans, 2 rows
Also,
of
you could
corn,
have,
something like.
what if you could have corn and in between the rows you're growing broccoli and this
Yeah,
little
yeah,
machine can harvest the
yeah,
broccoli
yeah,
and
yeah,
you still
exactly.
got
Yeah,
your corn, you still got your bean. You're
yeah,
not having to be out there 24/7 weeding and doing these. When I watched this thing, I was like, holy mackerel. I wish I could live long enough to watch this. I'm afraid I'm going to die before I see it happen. That's to me as exciting as we can grow all the food we want. It's going to look different. It's
well,
going to look different than what we're used to.
we can't have that. This is the way we've always done it, though, Keith. This is why we've done it for, I mean, the last 40 or 50 years is the only length of time we farmed like this. But that's the way we've always done it. We can't change agriculture. It won't look the same.
I'm thinking myself, because I'm not that I'm lazy or anything. I don't work hard as anybody. But I'm thinking if I had 16 little things and they planted my 4 rows of corn and then they had broccoli between it and cauliflower and onions, whatever you want, flowers, whatever you want to grow.
Yeah.
It can harvest and do all those things. And I can go mountain bike riding while it's
Yeah.
doing that. How much better can life get?
Yeah.
You're still
Yeah.
farming. You
Yep.
still, you might have to be there, to make sure there's seed and stuff or whatever, whatever's going on with these little machines. And they may not look like the ones they're designing now, but I really think that's going to be where farming's going to go. This huge equipment and the thing, once you get a machine that knows that's a weed and can cut it up or mow it or do
Yeah.
something and not use some chemical so minute you don't even know it used it. I think we're about, to me, I think we're where I was in 91. So we're talking 35 years from now. We're
Yeah.
going to see some of these things. You'll get to experience it, Mike. That's what I think you're going to get to
Well,
do. I think we're just right on the verge of some big changes.
I hope for the sake of those of us who are trying to get our foot in the door and kind of get our feet under us and try and establish a bit of an operation, some of this technology gets to the point where it's not cost prohibitive because I'm sure initially it's going to be cost prohibitive for the smaller guy. But if it gets to the point
It
where it is
might be.
afford where but if it gets to the point where well I can go buy six of these versus having to buy a tractor and a planter and a drill, um,
And a combine and a
yeah,
sprayer.
yeah. So
Because
it would get
these little machines can each machine can do all those little things.
right,
You just
right.
put a different attachment on it.
Yeah, yeah. So we get to that
I was
point.
surprised how cheap it is. Yeah.
Well, and yeah,
Be
and
fun.
maybe it will be. Yeah, because well, it'll give like I said, guys like me, well, that's a hell of a lot easier to digest than $2 million worth of equipment and
And
like
you have to do the work. You get to
yeah,
go.
yeah,
You don't get to go fishing. You don't get
yeah,
to go bike riding. You don't get to read. Or, you can
yeah,
just imagine sitting at the end of the field, like, oh, here comes one. Oh,
yeah.
oh, I don't have to do anything to it today. You might have one die and have to go out and work on it.
you go mountain
Yeah,
biking. I'll go to Mexico and drink $2 beer. So
there you go. I'd even go to Mexico with you.
well,
That's a fun place to go.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, me and my wife, we like our cruises, and cruises are nice. Beer's a little expensive, but you stop in Mexico, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make up for the expensive beer on the boat.
And the human condition is, I really think humans like to accomplish something.
Yep.
I mean, you like to see it done. I mentioned earlier that even when I was plowing, I felt, oh shit, I got something done.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but you could see it. With these little machines, the same thing. You'll still be seeing something done. You still have to kind of be around to keep them going. They'll probably be way more autonomous than we think, than you and I can imagine. But still, there are going to be times, for a long time, that there's still going to have to be human involvement. You're still
Yeah.
going to get involved. It's not going to change anything other than just how it's done.
Yeah. Well, you'll be able to spend your time. You'll be able to spend your time working on the business or going and moving the livestock if we need to move livestock or something, or we can go and examine a problem. We can micromanage our soils better, micromanage our business better instead of I got to be in the tractor running the planter and then I got to work on the damn thing when it breaks down.
Right, exactly. And then also, if things are going right, you got time to go be with the family, go to the
Yeah.
basketball games, the kids in or whatever, go bike, yeah, whatever's your thing.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Yeah.
their own. Man, you and I are mentioning a couple, but there's thousands of things people like to do. Some
Yeah.
people just like to sit and read. That'd be, if somebody like to read, I think this would be like, you mean I can sit here and read and watch those things, do all this stuff? But I just got to make sure they keep moving. I'm into that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That way.
Yeah, no, like you
Yeah.
said, it'll be interesting because yeah, the talk has been there for a couple years now, but like you said, we got to be approaching a tipping point to where the technology is there and the feasibility of it is catching up with it and start seeing it on the
This
marketplace.
this one I looked at, I think the name of it was Greenfield Technologies, or was the name of the little tractor thing. You look it up, Greenfield. Matter of fact, I think one of the guys is from Kansas. That's part of the Clint Bauer, I think's his name.
Well, aren't they in
Bauer.
Wichita? aren't they in Wichita? Isn't that where they're based out of, or
I
somewhere
think,
down there?
yeah. I mean, yeah. They're right around here. It was a
Yeah.
wonderful, fun talk to listen to. I got all excited. I thought, oh man, this gonna it's gonna take too long to happen. So I don't get to play with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going, come on, Elon Musk, get on this. Come on.
Get on this quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's lots of things coming on. I think we're honestly, you keep hearing this that we're right on the edge of the golden age, and I think we are. I really do. What it's going to look like, I have no idea. I'm
yeah,
just thinking it's going to be better than what we got now, and
yeah.
people live better and healthier and have more time to goof off. Or I don't need goofing off. I don't like goofing off. Even when I'm goofing off, I like to work. That seems crazy, doesn't it? I like
Just
to do
doing it,
something.
being able to do the things you enjoy and not
Yes,
have
I think
to.
that's goofy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and be able to, like you said, have a better quality of life, be able to go do the things you enjoy when you want to do them, and not be tied to, well, I got to get this done. Um,
Yeah.
just be more efficient with
And
doing what we're doing.
and the number one thing we haven't even mentioned, I mean, we kind of in passing, but this whole idea will be bringing better food and health to the public. As just, I mean, we honestly, I don't think when food leaves our farm, there's anything wrong with it. I've told
Mm,
people, I don't know what happens when it leaves my farm, but when it leaves my farm, I've grown the very best product I can. I know there's nothing seriously wrong with it. It- that's not a
well,
farmer does not grow bad food. I
well,
don't know what happens when it leaves us.
well, my whole thought has always been, um, good nutritious food should not be exclusive. All food should
Exactly.
be all food should be good. All food should be clean, whatever you want to say. All food should be nutritious. That should be the goal of every pound of food, every ounce of food, every single thing grown. When it gets to that store, it should be maybe not good for you,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be detrimental to you.
Right. And everybody should have the ability to get it. It shouldn't be just because you've got enough damn money to buy the better food.
Yeah,
That is wrong thinking. That to
yeah,
me, wrong thinking. Everybody
yeah,
should have the same good stuff.
yeah,
So,
yep,
yeah.
yep. Well, we've covered a lot. Yeah, this was a good conversation. Like you said, we could we could go for hours. Because yeah, you like I said, you got lots of experience, you got lots of tidbits, and just that's why you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a great resource, a great asset for people. Where can people find you? I know you're on social media. Where can people find you?
Uh, I really don't do any. My my ex account is He Farms LLC. That's that's the one I'm on most. Kind of reading. I really don't do a lot of. I mean, I'm on do the Facebook. I don't have an Instagram. I have an Instagram account, but I never get on it.
Right,
Um, just I don't know. Not that I don't have a YouTube deal.
right,
I
right.
thought about doing YouTube things. I was just like, oh, I don't know, that looks like a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do that.
But yeah, no,
Good, I guess.
find him at X, guys, if you want to reach out to him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I said,
X, I definitely talk to anybody.
yeah, he like I said, he's a wealth of knowledge. Um, like you said, if I get this published before Monday next week, before yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, well, however you want to say it for Notes on the Plains conference. I don't know if I'll get it out before then, but yeah, you run into him anywhere, he'll talk to you, whether you want him to or not. He'll talk to you. So,
Yeah, yeah, sure. Good to talk to you, Tyrell.
yep, thanks, guys. So hit that
It's
like button,
been
guys.
fun.
Hit that subscribe button. Leave a question, leave a comment as always, and we'll see you next time.